It's Dave, it's Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review, and for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Reno, Nevada progressive metal duo 4-Stroke Baron. The band's new album, Data Diamond, will be released on May 31st via Prosthetic Records. So, album number 4 from 4-Stroke Baron, which follows up the 2021 classics.
Marketing on point.
Data Diamond.
The branding is sweet. It's on fleek, Dave.
Fleek. Data Diamond, however, is the sound of 4-Stroke Baron at their most confidently unhinged. Originally conceived as 2 separate EPs, one purely electronic, Data, and one heavy, Diamond, that would then meld together on one full-length release. The idea morphed into what is now the succinct sucker punch of an album that is heading our way at speed. Heavily inspired by their own work on Data Diamond's predecessor classics, Witt and Valerino got to work in their laboratory creating the most potent, concentrated form of 4-Stroke Baron possible. We love classics. We think it's one of the coolest albums ever, the pair state unequivocally. If they have any criticism of their previous work, it's simply that they didn't push their own boundaries far enough, feeling like they took just a little too long to get to the point.
Well, did they hear your review of the album? Like, did you go back and hear your review of classics?
I didn't actually.
It's like almost verbatim what you said. Like, really? I like it. It took too long at the start to get into it, and then it took too long at the end to get out of it. So it's almost as if they heard you.
I mean,
but there's a problem. I've said many times, don't listen to Dave. Well, so we'll see if listening to Dave.
No such claim could be laid against Data Diamond. A dizzying sub 40-minute dive into the deranged psyches of its creators. The tracks on Data Diamond are lithe yet allow enough room for idiosyncratic flourishes that mark this out as a true 4-Stroke Baron opus. If classics was a man v food belly-busting plate of indulgence, Data Diamond is an upmarket Gordon Ramsay dish served with a side of insanity.
It's fucking raw!
So, one of us may have listened to this album an extraordinary amount of times.
Do you want the count?
I would like the count, Duncan.
Can we just stress that we've had this album for how long now? It's well over a month. It's almost 2 months. Almost 2 months at this point. We've had this album. Prosthetic have treated us, and every other reviewer. I just want to stress emotional favoritism. To access to this album for like 2 months, which is just an insane amount of time. And what historically in the past, what you would do, Dave, as the arbiter of music, you would say this is when it's scheduled for review, and I will hold back albums until a couple of weeks before, and then I will send them through, rather than just give you stuff constantly, because then you'll listen to that stuff and not listen to your homework, and then when we come to do our reviews, you're like, I am woefully ill-prepared. However, this album, which is out a month from now, has been listened to a lot. So I've had it for like 2 months, which is fucking mind-blowing. And as a result for that, I've listened to it 47 times. Well, I'm not even joking. 47 full listens.
Oh my god! I remember.
Hate it.
I remember when you messaged me and you were like,
"I was in my 20s at that point."
You're in your 20s, and I was like, "I've not even started listening to this yet," and he's done 20 odd listens.
Binge this fucker like on loop, on repeat. I've listened to this an inordinate amount of times, which is interesting because classics. We reviewed classics. And when we reviewed that, I said to you that I kind of fell for that album. And when I gave it its grade, I was like that. I can see me coming back to reappraise this and like feeling that I've scored it too low. And by the end of the year, it was in my top 20. For an album that sounded very Devy, right? That's heavy with a D. Very Devy, right? And I don't like Devin Townsend's sound, his oeuvre, particularly much. There's like little pockets. And we spent an inordinate amount of time on that review actually talking about the production, the sound, and what they had brought to it. So they're now, I'm assuming, not working with him.
So, Duncan,
did you get information on this? Because he's been driving me up the wall.
I did.
Wait, who and when did they record
there was
this?
nothing in the press release. I couldn't find anything online.
No,
there was
this
nothing
is like
mentioned.
the best kept secret in fucking music.
So
here.
I was like, I'm going to have to go direct to the source, Duncan. I'm going to have to go and speak to the band about this because I need this information. So I messaged the band and I was like, you need to let me know.
Oh, hear you.
So the album was recorded, produced, mixed and mastered by vocalist and guitarist Kirk Witt.
Kirk, I love you. And you're not coming to Scotland for now, but when you do, me and you are going to share some. I know you guys drink because I've seen your social media, so not that I'm stalking you. We're gonna go drinking.
Yeah.
That's like I would just say keep doing that. The production on this is fucking incredible. Like, you don't save your record label money, save you some money, just keep it all in house. Right, so classics I loved. I've been back to listen to loads. We're giving enough context in this one. We've had it for months. I sent you a message after maybe the fourth track, and I basically said, Dave, I'm getting a lot here. There's a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
And last year, I became enamored with a certain duo called 100 Gex. And I liked them because we're all over the place and loads of different elements and loads of different influences and very, very electronic, and they just mix a lot of stuff. And I basically said to you, there's a hint of the Gex about this. And I don't know if that's going to play it for the whole release. So this particular album may be too much for you. I just put that out there as a statement. Tell you who it wasn't too much for. This guy right here, who has two thumbs and really enjoyed this album. 47 listens. This guy. I think I can't even hide it. This is my favorite album I've heard this year. I love this. I absolutely. This is an album made for me, right? I've used this sentence a couple of times already tonight, but just in general, to you in messages and just in other reviews. 2024 to me is the year where conventions and the music rulebook is just being torn up by acts all over the place, and I'm here for it, right? I'm preconditioned. I have years of listening to J-Rock, right? Where they'll just throw in a hip-hop beat, which doesn't work, but then they'll do some metal over the top of it, and then a little anime girl will sing, and then before we know it, it's blast beats, and guess what else? There's some EDM in there, and it's one song. You're like, what the fuck? Four-Stroke Barn maybe are not that extreme, but I'll tell you what they have almost a complete moratorium on, and that is vision. This album, the scope and vision on this one is just fucking mind-melting. It doesn't surprise me that they've said in the press statement that there's an electronic album here and there's a more conventional four-stroke, but I would say that I don't even think the split is necessarily that defined. I think there are tracks that maybe lean a little bit more into synth-driven sounds, but even those tracks still find their root back in metal vocals or guitars. So I don't think maybe they saw it as maybe. I think this fits all in one album. I would much rather have it as one album than start picking songs apart and create two EPs, which to me is a waste if your plan is to release it as an album anyway. Well, that's the first statement. This review is going to go long. We're 9 minutes. There's two songs in here that are essentially kind of interlude fodder, right? One of them is On Mute, which is instrumental, and the other one is Vault, which is instrumental. Both those tracks, I would imagine, if you were a vinyl collector, might be opposite sides of the vinyl, I don't know, or might be actually where the natural split was when they pieced them together, potentially. But I find them hugely interesting. I hate bands that do instrumental intros or outros, and they're the only bits that have certain instrumentation, or it's all orchestra and movie samples, and then you get an album that has fucking none of that. What is the point? What is the point? You cannot throw that at Four-Stroke Barn. The Sims that are used on Mute here are revisited in Data Diamond, like the same tones, the same like it's all reused. In fact, Data Diamond goes back to the well and almost picks Sims from all the tracks and kind of combines it all together. And like it's on the 47 listens that like I identified there's clear patterns between what they do. They have a very unique sound. Like I don't know if I can comfortably say what genre 4-Stroke Baron actually sit in. I know they get lumped into that kind of progressive metal, but I don't even think that necessarily does them justice. I think 4-Stroke Baron are a genre with one band in it. They have a couple of things that make them an exceptional band in my eyes, in my opinion. The first thing is they are all about the hook, right? This guy's vocals are Tears for Fears friendly, right? They are 80s-tastic. And yeah, he goes gimmicky with it. He'll put it through pitch augmenters and vocoders and all the rest, but it fucking works, right? But when they hit a chorus, when 4-Stroke Baron hit a chorus, be prepared to have a whole section of your brain just move the furniture across, put a couch down and have that melody sit on it, and don't charge them rent because they're living rent-free in your head, Dave. And it is, like, every song, when the chorus hits, that chorus is in there. The other thing they've got is a bizarre attention to detail on, like, groove. Like, see when the guitars need to sync up with those bass pedals, they just do. And they change the rhythms up enough to make them really interesting, so they're not just the stock metal bit in or amongst a lot of electronics. No, they're very clever. When you listen to Monday, which is the first proper song, it's a very disjointed track, but actually, by your 47th listen, it's actually surprisingly conventional what the structure is. It's just the way they play with the rhythms on the bass pedals and the guitar make it sound a lot more complicated than it is. It's a musician flex, because to the casual listener, you're like, this is fucking crazy. It's all over. It's actually not. It's surprisingly conventional, but what they've done is utilise tools, techniques, and rhythm changes, and which actually make it sound a lot more complicated than it is, and it's credit to them. Monday is a song that, if that's your first introduction to 4-Stroke Baron, I imagine you're hitting stop. It is so bizarre, but I'll tell you what, like, you wade your way through it, and then that chorus kicks in, and you're like, oh my fucking god, it's like an oasis in a desert. It's just like, this is what music is about. And they go really playful with it. The Witch is the first single that we'd heard, and actually at the end of The Witch, I think both of us were like, okay, because we'd heard that in advance of the album. We're like, right, I don't know what's going on here. I was interested to see where it was going to fit on the album, and like classics, a lot of these songs, in fact predominantly the majority of the album, just flows like one giant long song, which I love as well, because it's telling a story. The music videos are also telling a story. At the point of release of this, they've only done 2 music videos. They may have one coming out pretty much around the time the album drops, so there may be a third one out. We're reacting to all of them, so please check out our reactions as well. We jump into The Witch. The Witch is a fucking banger of a track. Huge chorus. This is who I am, baby. Like, he's... Oh, I found that there's a quality in his voice where it goes a little bit wheatus, and I'm not against it. You know, I have 2 tickets for Iron Maiden, baby, and I'm there for it, right? They go that way. They're just such a playful, inventive band. The synths are the big thing for me, where the album on Mute has a lot of really cool synth work, and it's a kind of almost a kind of full retro sound. Kind of feels like 70s sci-fi. It's fucking incredible. And then when you jump into The Witch, that's when that starts to expand out. There's clear, deliberate choices in the synth sounds and a mixture of it. And it's not because we've got 20 sounds on the synth, so we need to use them all. They're actually tailored really, really, really well. And that brings you into Cyborg Part 3, Because I'm God. Now, both myself and Dave have done our due diligence and listened to Cyborg Part 1 and Cyborg Part 2 and listened to Cyborg Part 3. And there's connective tissue in those songs.
Yeah.
So that, to me, once again, is a shade of... It's another level of fucking... Why are these guys so fucking good? It's like variations on a theme between releases. Cyborg Part 3 is the big single of this album. The chorus is fucking incredible. The songwriting is amazing. It's just flawlessly good. Then you slip into Vault, which is this kind of instrumental synthy sort of track, into Open the World, and then you get the back half of the album, and the back half of the album bends you over, pulls your pants down, and spanks your ass, leaving a handprint. This is where the album levels up for me, because this is where they go full crazy. So I imagine if this was a separate EP, that would kind of make sense. Open the World is just like my jaw was on the ground. It's a combination of very, very 80s synth, like very Tears for Fears synth, right? It's almost Mad World, you know what I mean? And what you get is like sections of kind of samples with his vocals in the background. The big sample sounds like it's from a kind of preacher, an evangelic preacher, talking about how the poor are trying to demonize the rich, etc., 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 etc. But in the middle of it, out of fucking nowhere, there's a big dance hook that kicks in, like it could be playing or a boom, boom, boom. It's fucking like mind-opening, and the synths are incredible, and they're layered and textured. And in the background, the drummer is just being, and we'll come back to the drummer is fucking amazing. He was amazing in the previous one. I just get the feeling he's just been allowed to do his thing, right? And he goes jazzy, he goes proggy, he goes metal, he can do it all. Open the World is like one of those tracks that by the end of it, I was just like, that could just be a song itself. Like, could exist in its own entity. But then they bring it back into probably the heaviest, most metal song on it, which is People in My Image. It's the one that kind of has a bit of a that's the one that kind of slips back into a more Devin Townsend sort of proggy metal thing. But I mean, it's like a minute before the vocals kick in, and they're layered. And once the chorus in this one, in there forever. I could sing it all day, right? I absolutely love it. And it's just another element where the band just know that they can experiment, they can fuck around, but they never lose sight of, all right, this is still a song, so we bring it back. We never forget where we are. And it's the most conventional song on the entire album, even though it ends with big bendy guitars and them making weird kind of weird noises. You then kick into 1000 Threads, or as I like to call it, 1000 Gex, just to annoy Dave. It's another one where it kind of feels you're gonna get there. It's the one that has the Wheatus kind of "Meet me outside with the background, baby." Like, I fucking love it, right? But it's catchy. It's a potential other single, but it's deliberate, methodical, pulsing, and then you swing into Data Diamond, where they basically bring everything into that final track and they conclude it. The production on this is fucking incredible. Like the balance, the synth stuff, and the production is like, it melts my brain at how well this is produced. There's a better production than classics. You can't throw the same accusations as like using kind of almost stock Devin Townsend filters and sheens over it. This just is so well put together. Musically, the guitar work is fucking great. It doesn't overplay in any part, but doesn't kind of need to. It's an element within a lot of elements. The synth work on this is incredible. It's like maybe my favourite synth album that I've heard this year in terms of what they've done. So many textures, so many tones, so many like I kept coming back to this. Sounds like a 70s sci-fi soundtrack. It's just like incredible. Vocally amazing. Guy could just like sing the phone book to me. And I got to the end of it. Like, even on my first listen, I got to the end and it was like that. This is fucking incredible. And 47 listens into it, you wouldn't believe this. I'm going to say, I still think this is incredible. I don't think I'll find an album that sounds like this year. I don't think there will be an album that sounds like this year. I think they are the very antithesis of pushing the envelope and making it work. And I understand if someone comes back to me, Dave, and says to me, it's too much, that's fine. Well, I'm not going to argue with you. To me, this is like the fucking third bowl of porridge and Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This is just right, Dave. It's just, this is This is my jam. This is my vibe. It's going to take a fucking act of God to knock this off the top spot. Like, honestly, I adore this album. I'm over the moon. I think the like home run doesn't begin to do justice to how good this album is. I don't even know if the band know how good this album is. But I'm just going to tell them right now, if you're listening to this, it's fucking amazing. I've talked 20 minutes on this. You need to shut me down, Dave. How did you get on with it? I'm genuinely curious, because I asked you, I think it was after the first listen, and you were like just like a big like exhale of breath, and then the next time I spoke to you was like about a month later, and you were like, that I've completely listened to, and I was like like a month in between listens, so you've obviously had to go back to it. I've estimated the time scale in which we reviewed it, because I don't want to be at 55 listens for a review. How did you get, because you said that on the previous review they could have went a bit more experimental, and the album should have been shorter, and I kind of feel that this album and a little bit more experimental, and it's definitely fucking shorter. So
a little bit experimental, or a lot of bit experimental.
In for a penny, in for a pound, potato, Dave.
I remember like when you messaged me and you were on your like 20 fucking umpteenth listen of the album, and I was like, shit, I really need to start listening to this album.
He's going to talk 21 minutes about this.
And I was like, right, I'm going to play this album. I stuck it on. And I played it through once, and I was kind of, this is a word that we tend to use, no one else really uses this, but I was kind of furniturized by
it means when you're actually, your face and body resemble the shape of a couch. You're just like...
And we'd had like the benefit of reacting to a couple of tracks already, so I knew to a degree what I was in for. But
did you though, Dave?
When I heard the whole album, I was like, there's a lot to unpack here. There's just a lot to unpack. And it's not a long album. It's like just over 40 minutes. No. But it is packed.
It's a kitchen sink album. You know what I mean?
It is packed. And it's not like, it's unconventional as well in places. So it's not like it's not an album that I found was pre-lubed. You know what I mean? It was like, it kind of hit me like dry and raw, basically. Not even a spit in the hand first or anything like that.
It was not got merch. Like, how we not got merch, Dave? Like the taglines for t-shirts just flow out as
and I'd say even after 3 listens, I was still struggling to kind of put into words my feelings on this album. But those albums they tend to be the ones that you'll come back to more, because there's so much to analyze. And this one was one of those albums. And when I hit the magic number of listens,
47.
It was 4. My fourth listen, something clicked on that 4th listen, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. All right, okay. I'm starting to remember that. I'm starting to pick out this and that. And once that had happened, I knew exactly what I wanted to say about this album. But firstly, before we get into the actual album, even though like my first few listens were a bit of a blur, one thing that did stand out was the production of this album.
I can't believe he did it himself. Why is he not just doing that all the time?
I don't know. It's such a unique sounding album. One element in particular really caught my attention. The drums, obviously.
That snare drum, Dave?
Fuck me. Like, the snare is like so much, there's so much tone and so much depth to it. It's like super snappy, but it's got like this kind of like roomy kind of resonance to it as well. It just fills your headphones. And the kick drum, man, like such a punch to it. A really, really cool EQ to it as well. It's quite clicky, but still like really gutsy at the same time. And to be honest, I honestly spent the first kind of half of the album just listening to the drums alone. I was just like fascinated, like obsessed. It's probably one of the reasons it took me 4 listens for this album to make sense, to be honest. But the production across the board is fantastic. And I said, use headphones. Like, I'd recommend get the good headphones out. There's so much to appreciate from just a sound perspective, but also musically. Yeah, Four Stroke Baron do not hold back on this release, but it's kind of special. Firstly, I kind of love the fact that they have combined two EP ideas together. Firstly, because I fucking hate EPs, but secondly,
selfishly, I hate EPs. Yeah. Secondly,
but because it was like one kind of light EP and one heavy EP, it's made there's a kind of balance within this chaos. You can hear they've taken like the fabric of classics from 2021 and just like tightened it right up. Like there's not an ounce of excess fat on this. Like everything is super concentrated. As they said, they've made the tracks go kind of like more to the point, but also pushed the limits of the tracks to another level. And the end product is something that is hyper catchy, but at the same time, like extrovertly trailblazing at the same time. Yeah. It's super creative. Like, and I'll admit, a lot of it, the first couple of listens, it flew right over my head. But then every listen after that, I started noticing all these different things. Because a lot of it is in the detail of this album. Just like the way they use electronic drums in short bursts between real drums, the kind of glitches and the dark synths that they travel from like ear to ear in your headphone. There's like horror-esque kind of samples that appear intermittently. There's distorted vocoder, pitch shifted vocal effects that are intermingling throughout the track. I want to say I even heard a bit of brass in there, but I'm not entirely sure. But that's the first track, by the way. That's just like the first main track, all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not even like that's sparingly mixed throughout the album. That is the first main track. After the intro, first main track, everything.
Yeah, Monday.
On Monday. It's nuts. But Four Stroke Baron have mastered the art of construction, because these tracks are eccentric and off the wall, and at first, they might sound like everything has just been thrown in a melting pot, but actually these tracks are very, very smartly built. There is method in their madness here, because not only do these tracks have very subtle kind of breathing spells throughout them where they maybe let the synth take more of a lead, or the way they've kind of ordered these tracks to allow you to enjoy these insanely good hooks throughout the kind of madness of the album. And every track has a hook. Every single track on here has a hook. Some are more subtle than others, but there's always one there. And it makes this album one that you want to return to as many times as Duncan has. It is utterly infectious. Once you click with it, it's very difficult not to want to keep coming back to it. It's incredibly well done. But one thing that I really loved about this is the clever writing of the vocal melodies, which are similar to classics, but kind of on steroids. If you thought like the last album was hooky, then you ain't heard shit, because this is like next level. I think the writing and the delivery from Kirk on this album is next level, and the variations of his voice on this is super cool. Like the vocal techniques, the effects, the layering, very incredibly well done. But all that stuff is worthless unless you have the melodies that can, complement what's going on in the rest of the album. And on Data Diamond, they've nailed that relationship perfectly. Same can be said for the guitar work. Like some of the riffs on this are played in a way that aren't really like anyone else. It was kind of almost like, see, the first time I heard Car Bomb, they were kind of like in their own lane and when it came to guitar work, and this gave me that kind of same feeling. I love the way that the guitars aren't always just used as like a riff machine. They're also there to add mood, add a bit of detail to the tracks, to elevate or reinforce a section. And it's funny, like when we add these reviews to YouTube and the website, I usually put up like a bit of info with them, like label, release date, all that sort of stuff. And we have a for fans of kind of section as well, where I put in bands. When I was writing the stuff up for this release, for this review, I couldn't put anything in for fans of, nothing at all, because this sounds like one thing, and that is four-stroke Baron. Like, this is so unique. With classics, like you said, there was still certain connective influences.
I don't know how much of that's production and being in the presence of. I don't know. Like, it'd be interesting to chat to them sometime and see if we can drill into what the creative experience. Like, had the full album been written, then they went to Tim's End and then he recorded it, or was there conversation there between maybe do a little bit more of this, because it did feel like there were certain elements that were very much in a Devin Tim's End lane, and they're kind of gone here, like, completely. And what I'm getting is more of what I think their personality is, and their personality. See, when people, not to dismiss Devin Townsend and swipe at him on another four-stroke Baron review, when people call him a genius, I kind of see what they're getting at, but I also think that they're inflating that man's ego. I think most of it is production. I think he's got an amazing voice. He's obviously excellent on the guitar, right? But when he plays live, which four-stroke Baron will have to do as well, a lot of it's in the back end. It's like huge layered vocals and all the rest. But it's still, when I listen to this, I just hear a level of creativity which is just, it's like a different level. And that makes me more excited. I kind of feel like this is the closest I've been to knowing who four-stroke Baron are.
I mean, I felt like there was not one point on this album where I went, oh, this riff or idea sounds like that band. Like, there was none of that at all. This is all four-stroke Baron. They have taken, like, they're classed as progressive metal, but they're not really progressive metal. They've put their own spin on their own genre, really, and did it with a confidence that makes me incredibly excited for the heights this band are going to reach going forward. Even with the video releases, and the singles,
we're loving them.
They're awesome, and there's a continuous thematic kind of narrative through the album. But each of these tracks could stand alone as a single, as we've heard, but there's also like a continuity there as well from the tracks that just flows through the album. It's been very carefully thought out. It's deceptively clever, actually, this album. I feel like it's kind of an album that I can't fully put into words and completely do it justice, because you kind of just need to hear it for yourself. But give it time. It is one of those albums, your first listen may be a bit like overwhelming, but it just gets better and better every time you hear it. Take a bow, like four-stroke Baron. This is
so fucking so good,
ridiculously good.
Oh man.
So final thing. I mean, scores for Data Diamond.
My favourite album of the year. It's a 2. It's a fact. I know I say this a lot, but I can't. It's underscore, like fucking exclamation mark, full stop, fucking neon lights pointing at it. This is the easiest 5 I think I will ever give out on Metal Epidemic, and my favourite album of this year. And the next album, which I also adore, there's a gap. And that other album is fucking incredible, but also weirdly, like four-stroke Baron, does a lot. Rulebook's been ripped up. These guys are it's a different level. This is as close as I will get to say that this to me is a masterpiece. I don't even know how you top this. I don't even know how you follow this. You know what I mean? I don't know what they have to do next. This is about as close to perfect is for me. So, and I mean that just musically, not for them or anything. It's so good. 5. That's a 5 if you hadn't guessed.
Excellent. This is Data Diamond is the band's kind of crowning moment for me. And when I thought like this can't get any better, they go and reference an Earth, Wind and Fire lyric on the closing track, and I was like,
what, Dave?
There's the money shot right there, gentlemen. Yep. Sign me up. So it is a 5 for me as well.
Yes, Dave.
Stunner, absolute stunning album.
I thought you were going to come in here with a big old 3. I'm happy that you came in with a big fat 5.
Oh, it's fat, Duncan. It is fat. Four-stroke Baron, Data Diamond, out on May 31st on Prosthetic Records. Links below. Check this fucking album out. Please listen to this album. That is a review. Thanks for sticking with us through this if you have.
Almost the length of the album. Without sense.
There was a lot to unpack, but that is a review. Thank you for checking out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon. But till then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone!
Very aggressive.
Yeah, I know.